I was supposed to have the easiest mission of my entire military career. Escort duty. That's it. No battles, no explosions, no heroic sacrifices, just flying alongside a diplomatic alien shuttle while it traveled through a quiet sector of space. The kind of assignment commanders give you when they want you out of the way, but still technically on duty. The aliens I was escorting belonged to a species that humans had only recently started dealing with. Tall, elegant, skin with this faint glowing shimmer to it. They moved slowly and gracefully, like everything they did had some kind of ceremonial importance. Personally, I thought they were just dramatic. Their shuttle was carrying someone important, royalty, apparently, but my orders were simple. Stay nearby, keep the route clear, and make sure nobody tried anything stupid. Which, for the record, usually means somebody definitely will. The first hint that things were about to go wrong was when my radar lit up like a fireworks show. 3 ships dropped out of warp directly in front of the convoy. They were ugly things, patched metal, mismatched engines, weapons bolted on like someone had glued them in place during a bad day in a scrapyard. Pirates. Of course it was pirates. I sighed, leaned back in my seat, and muttered to myself, there goes the easy mission. Before I could even open a communication channel, the pirate ships started firing. Red streaks of plasma tore across space, slamming into the alien escort drones and scattering them like startled birds. The diplomatic shuttle tried to veer away, but it was slow, not built for combat. And suddenly I realized something important. Those pirates weren't just attacking randomly. They were targeting the shuttle. Great, I groaned. Of course they are. My fighter was small but fast. I kicked the engines into full power and shot forward, weaving between incoming fire. The pirates clearly hadn't expected a human escort craft to actually fight back. Their mistake. I clipped the first pirate ship's engine with a missile, sending it spinning off into the void. The second tried to swing around behind me, but human fighters are designed for maneuvering in tight dogfights. 3 seconds later, it wasn't behind me anymore. It was behind me in several smaller pieces. That left one pirate ship. Unfortunately, it had already attached itself to the alien shuttle. Magnetic clamps locked onto the hull while a boarding tube extended like some kind of metallic parasite. I stared at the screen for a second. Seriously? I muttered. Technically, I could have waited for reinforcements. Technically, I could have just protected the area until the pirates left. Technically, boarding a pirate ship alone was a terrible idea. But the shuttle's life support readings were already fluctuating. So I grabbed my rifle, sealed my helmet, and launched myself toward the pirate ship. Sometimes doing the right thing is just doing the dumb thing faster than everyone else. The pirate airlock blew open under a quick charge. I stepped inside and immediately got greeted by 2 very surprised pirates holding plasma rifles. They didn't stay surprised long. The corridor erupted into chaos. Blaster fire flashing against metal walls, alarms screaming through the ship, boots pounding as more pirates came running. Boarding actions are messy, loud, and usually short. This one was no exception. Within minutes, I'd fought my way through the pirate vessel and reached the boarding tube connected to the alien shuttle. That's when I heard something unexpected. Screaming. Not the terrified kind. More like angry royal screaming. I stepped through the tube and into the shuttle. 3 alien guards were already down, stunned but alive. And standing in the middle of the room was one of the pirates, pointing a weapon at someone behind a control console. Someone tall. Someone glowing faintly. Someone who was very clearly not a guard. The alien turned toward me as I stepped in. For a moment, the entire room went silent. The pirate fired. I moved first. The rifle shot hit the pirate square in the chest before his weapon finished charging. He dropped instantly, collapsing to the floor with a heavy clang. Then everything was quiet again. I lowered the rifle slowly. The alien woman stepped out from behind the console, staring at me like she'd just seen a ghost. Up close, she looked even more striking. Her skin shimmered with faint patterns of light that shifted whenever she moved. Her eyes were bright and focused, studying me with intense curiosity. "You came aboard the pirate vessel," she said slowly. Her voice was calm, but there was disbelief in it. "Yeah," I said. seemed like the quickest way to stop them. She blinked. You risked your life for us? I shrugged. Well, they were shooting at you. The alien guards who were waking up nearby suddenly froze. They looked at me, then at her, then at each other. One of them whispered something in their language, and the others stared at me like I'd just done something incredibly important. The woman stepped closer. I am Princess Kilira of the royal line, she said carefully. Why would you endanger yourself for me? I honestly didn't know what answer she expected, so I gave her the simple one. Because it was the right thing to do. The silence that followed was strange. The guards looked shocked. One of them actually dropped his weapon. The princess's glowing skin brightened slightly, like a pulse of light moving across her arms. You declared it openly, one guard whispered. Another stared at me, with wide eyes. In front of witnesses. I frowned inside my helmet. Declared what? Nobody answered. Instead, the princess kept looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite understand. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. If anything, it looked almost like embarrassment. Which was weird, because I was the one standing in a pirate ship hallway covered in scorch marks. Eventually, the guards secured the ship and detached it from the shuttle. Once everything was stable again, I escorted them back to their capital system. The whole trip felt strange. Every alien crew member treated me with extreme respect. Some even bowed slightly when I walked past. The princess barely spoke, but whenever I caught her looking at me, her glowing skin would brighten again. I figured it was some kind of cultural thing. Aliens have a lot of those. When we finally arrived at their home planet, a message came directly from their royal government. An official invitation. Apparently, the royal court wanted to hold a ceremony in my honor for saving the princess during the pirate attack. Which sounded nice. Maybe a medal. Maybe a speech. Probably one of those long alien dinners where everyone thanks each other politely for a few hours. But when the princess delivered the message herself, her tone sounded different. The entire royal court will be present, she said softly. Okay. And many noble families. Sounds crowded. She hesitated for a moment before adding one more thing. It is rare for a declaration to be made so publicly. I frowned. Declaration. She looked at me for a long moment, the glow along her skin pulsing faintly again. You truly do not understand what you have done, she murmured. Not really, I admitted. She looked away almost shyly. The ceremony will explain everything. At the time, I thought she meant some kind of political tradition. What I didn't realize was that on her planet, saving a royal woman's life in front of witnesses wasn't just considered heroic. It was considered a public declaration that you intended to join her bloodline. And the moment the news reached the capital, every noble woman in their entire civilization started paying very close attention to the human who had just made the boldest romantic declaration in their history. By the time my fighter followed the diplomatic shuttle down toward the alien capital, the whole situation was already starting to feel strange. At first I thought it was just nerves. Flying into the homeworld of a species humanity had only recently met was bound to feel a little surreal. But the closer we got to the planet, the more my comm panel started lighting up with signals. News drones, broadcast satellites, civilian channels trying to ping my fighter. I frowned and muted most of them. Why is everyone trying to contact me? I asked over the escort frequency. One of the alien officers responded almost immediately, his voice unusually formal. You have attracted significant public attention. For saving the princess? There was a pause. Yes, he said carefully. For that. The tone made it sound like there was more to the story, but I figured it was just the usual political excitement. Royal rescue stories probably made good headlines. Still, as we descended through the atmosphere, I started noticing something odd. The capital city was enormous, towers of shining white metal rising into the clouds, bridges connecting massive floating platforms, streams of glowing aircraft moving through the sky like rivers of light. And everywhere we passed, cameras turned. Drones hovered near my fighter. Huge holographic screens mounted on towers flickered to life. One of them showed a replay of the pirate attack, specifically the part where I boarded their ship. Okay, I muttered. That's a little dramatic. The shuttle carrying the princess landed at the center of a massive palace complex. The place looked less like a building and more like someone had carved an entire city out of polished stone and glowing crystal. My fighter touched down in a nearby landing bay, and the moment the cockpit opened, I was greeted by a line of royal guards. They stood perfectly straight as I climbed down. Then, one by one, they saluted. Not a casual greeting either. The kind of formal salute soldiers use for high-ranking officers or heads of state. Hi, I said. None of them spoke. They simply stepped aside and gestured toward the palace entrance. I followed them through towering doors into a massive hallway lined with glowing pillars. The air inside smelled faintly sweet, like some kind of alien flower. But the thing I noticed immediately wasn't the architecture. It was the people. Aliens filled the corridor. Tall figures in elaborate clothing, shimmering fabrics, polished armor, and elegant ceremonial robes. And the moment I stepped into the room, they all looked at me. Every single one of them. Whispers spread instantly through the crowd. That's him. The human. The one who declared himself. I caught a few words here and there, even through the language translator in my helmet. Declared himself? Declared what? I tried to ignore it and kept walking with the guards, but the stares followed me everywhere. Some of the alien women looked curious. Some looked amused. A few looked like they were evaluating me the same way someone might inspect a rare animal. One group of noble women actually leaned together, whispering while openly staring at me. I shifted uncomfortably. Is my uniform dirty or something? I muttered. The guards didn't answer. Eventually, we reached a large chamber where several royal officials were waiting. And standing among them was someone I recognized immediately. Princess Kilira. She looked different from the last time I'd seen her. Instead of the practical uniform she'd worn during the pirate attack, she now wore flowing ceremonial garments that shimmered softly with light. When she noticed me entering, the glow across her skin brightened slightly, which I was starting to realize was some kind of emotional reaction. Human, she said, stepping forward. Princess, I replied, giving an awkward nod. For a moment we just looked at each other. Then she smiled. You arrived safely. Well, yeah. Nobody shot at me on the way down this time, so that helped. A few nearby officials chuckled politely, though they seemed more interested in watching the princess than listening to me. She studied me for a second before speaking again. The court is preparing the ceremony. Good, I said. I should probably figure out what I'm supposed to say. Her expression turned curious. Say, a speech. Thank everyone for the invitation, talk about cooperation between our species, that kind of thing. The princess blinked. A speech is not required. Oh. I scratched the back of my head. Even easier. Another strange pause followed. Around us, nobles continued whispering and staring. A few more had entered the chamber, and almost all of them were women. Actually, now that I thought about it, almost everyone I'd seen since entering the palace had been a woman. And they were definitely staring. One of them walked past slowly, glancing at me with open curiosity before whispering something to her companion. Another gave me a small smile. I leaned closer to the princess. Is there some kind of cultural thing going on here I should know about? Her glowing patterns shifted again, faint waves of color moving along her arms. Our people are very interested in humans. Yeah, I noticed. She hesitated, especially after a declaration. There's that word again, I said. Everyone keeps saying that. Before she could answer, a tall official in ornate robes approached us. The royal court is ready, he announced. Princess Kilira straightened immediately. The official looked at me next, his expression filled with something that almost looked like admiration. Human, he said. Today you will stand before the royal houses and confirm the most remarkable declaration our world has witnessed in generations. I opened my mouth, closed it again. Confirm what exactly? The official looked slightly confused by the question. But before he could answer, the doors at the far end of the chamber began to open. A massive hall stretched beyond them. Hundreds of seats arranged in rising circles around a central platform. And every seat was filled, mostly with alien women. All of them turned toward the entrance. all of them looking directly at me. I stopped walking. That's a lot of people. Yes, the official said proudly. The noble houses wished to witness this moment personally. Witness what moment? He gestured toward the platform in the center of the hall. The moment you confirm your intention to join the royal bloodline. My brain froze for a second. I'm sorry, I said slowly. My intention to do what? But the guards were already guiding me forward. And as we stepped into the enormous chamber, the whispers grew louder. Excited, curious, hopeful. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The audience wasn't just watching me. They were studying me, like contestants watching the grand prize being rolled onto the stage. And suddenly, a very uncomfortable thought crossed my mind. I had come here expecting to give a thank you speech, but judging by the way every noblewoman in that hall was staring at me, I had the horrible feeling they were expecting something very, very different. The moment I stepped onto the central platform, the whispering got louder. Hundreds of alien voices murmuring at once created this strange echo through the massive hall. The nobles sat in rising circles all around the room, their glowing eyes fixed entirely on me. I had been in combat zones quieter than that place. I stood there for a moment, trying to look calm, while internally wondering if there was some emergency exit I could sprint toward without causing an interplanetary incident. Princess Kilira stood beside me, her posture perfectly composed, but I noticed the faint light patterns across her skin pulsing slowly. I was starting to think that glow meant she was nervous. Honestly, I couldn't blame her, because I had absolutely no idea what was happening. The king entered a moment later. Everyone in the hall immediately stood. The movement happened so fast and so perfectly synchronized that it almost looked rehearsed. The king was even taller than the princess, his ceremonial armor shimmering with the same faint light that ran across the skin of their species. His presence carried the kind of authority that made the entire room feel smaller. He walked to the front of the platform and looked directly at me. Then he smiled. "Human," he said, his voice carrying easily across the hall. "Today we honor the courage you displayed when pirates attacked the royal shuttle." That part sounded normal enough. A few polite nods came from the audience. "You fought alone against our enemies," the king continued. "You boarded their vessel, defeated them, and saved the life of my daughter." More murmurs. More staring. I shifted my weight awkwardly. Honestly, I muttered under my breath. It wasn't that big a deal. Apparently, the translator picked that up, because the king's smile grew wider. "Such humility," he said approvingly. I blinked. That definitely wasn't how my commander would have described me. Then the king raised one hand, and the room fell silent again. "In our culture," he announced, "there is no gesture more powerful than a heroic declaration." The nobles leaned forward slightly. I frowned. "Heroic declaration? When one risks their life to save another," the king continued, "especially before witnesses, it is understood as a public vow. A declaration of devotion and the willingness to join that individual's bloodline." The words echoed through the hall, and suddenly every single pair of eyes in the room was staring at me with even more interest than before. My brain tried to process that sentence. It didn't go well. I leaned slightly toward the princess and whispered, "Hold on what?" She didn't look surprised. If anything, she looked almost shy. "You saved me before my guards," she said quietly. "Yeah. You declared your devotion before witnesses." "I declared that pirates shouldn't shoot people," I whispered urgently. But the king was still speaking. "The human's bravery has already become known across our world," he said proudly. "Many houses have expressed admiration for such a bold declaration." The whispering started again. This time it sounded excited. I slowly looked around the chamber. The noble women weren't just watching anymore. They were studying me. Some leaned toward each other while quietly discussing something. Others watched me with obvious curiosity. A few were smiling. I turned back to the princess, lowering my voice even further. "Just so we're clear," I said carefully, "you guys think I attacked a pirate ship because I was proposing?" Her glowing patterns brightened slightly. It was an extremely bold declaration. I rubbed my helmet visor. "Oh no." The king gestured toward me again. "Now the human will confirm his intention before the court." My head snapped up. Confirm what? But before anyone could answer, a noblewoman stood from one of the upper levels. She was tall, wearing elaborate armor that gleamed like polished metal. If the human joins the royal bloodline, she said loudly, my house offers alliance through traditional trials. Another woman stood nearby. My house offers intellectual challenge instead. Let us test the human's wisdom. A third rose from the opposite side of the hall. My house will present the culinary rights of our people. Within seconds, dozens of nobles were speaking at once. Trials, competitions, challenges, demonstrations. The entire room erupted into excited discussion. I stared at them in horror. Why are they competing? Princess Kilira crossed her arms slightly. Because if you join the royal bloodline, she said calmly, many houses wish to prove their worth as allies. That sounds suspiciously like a dating show. She tilted her head. What is a dating show? You don't want to know. The noise in the hall kept rising as more noble women stood, clearly trying to get the king's attention. One proposed a combat challenge. Another suggested a diplomatic debate. One even offered to demonstrate her family's agricultural innovations. I felt like the grand prize in the galaxy's weirdest tournament. Your Majesty, one noblewoman said, the human should witness the strengths of our houses before making his choice. Choice. I leaned closer to the princess again. Please tell me I'm misunderstanding something. She looked thoughtful. You are highly desirable. That is not comforting. The king finally raised his hand again, quieting the hall. All proposals will be considered, he declared. Then he looked back at me. Human, he said warmly, you have inspired great enthusiasm. Yeah, I'm noticing. You may now speak your intentions. Every eye in the room locked onto me again.
Hundreds of them.
Waiting. Expecting. I had fought pirates, navigated asteroid storms, and once survived a supply meeting with 3 admirals arguing at the same time. But nothing had prepared me for this. I leaned toward the princess one more time. Quick question, I whispered. Yes. If I tell them I was just trying to help, will that offend your entire civilization? She considered that carefully. Possibly. I sighed. Of course it would. She studied me for a moment, her glowing skin pulsing softly. You truly did not intend a declaration? No. Where I come from, saving someone from pirates is just basic decency. She blinked. The glow across her arms brightened again. That is a remarkable cultural trait. Glad you like it, I said. Because apparently it just got me volunteered to marry half your planet. For a moment, she looked amused. Then something else appeared in her expression. Something softer. You did save me, she said quietly. I looked at her.
Yeah.
And you expected nothing in return. Pretty much. Her glow brightened again, stronger this time. Behind us, the entire court waited for my answer. And that's when a very uncomfortable realization hit me. If I told them the truth, I might accidentally insult their traditions. But if I played along, I might accidentally become the most eligible bachelor in their entire civilization. Every eye in the royal hall was still locked on me. Hundreds of noble women sat in rising circles around the chamber, their glowing skin patterns shifting softly as they waited for my answer. Some looked curious. Some looked hopeful. A few looked like they were already planning what kind of wedding ceremony they preferred. Meanwhile, I stood in the center of the room wondering how saving someone from pirates had somehow turned into the most dangerous social situation of my entire life. The king watched me patiently. Human, he said calmly. You may declare your intentions. Intentions?
Right.
I glanced sideways at Princess Kilira. Her posture was calm, but the faint glow running along her arms was brighter than before. I was beginning to realize that glow was the alien equivalent of blushing.
Great.
No pressure. Just an entire royal court, a planet full of expectations, and a cultural misunderstanding big enough to start a diplomatic incident. I leaned toward her slightly. Last chance, I whispered. If I tell them I wasn't declaring anything, are they going to be offended?
She thought about it.
A little. How little? She hesitated. Possibly very little. That was not a comforting answer. I straightened and looked around the hall again. The nobles were still watching me like I was some kind of rare cosmic phenomenon, which, apparently, I was. The king gestured toward me again. You risked your life for my daughter, he said. Our traditions recognize such actions as the strongest declaration of devotion. I scratched the back of my neck. Your Majesty, I said slowly, where I come from, saving someone's life doesn't mean we expect anything in return. The translator echoed my words across the hall. For a moment, the entire chamber went silent. A few nobles exchanged confused looks. The king leaned forward slightly. You expect no alliance? No claim to the royal bloodline? Nope. A ripple of whispers spread through the audience. I raised my hands slightly. Look, humans do heroic things because it's the right thing to do. If someone's in danger, we help. That's just normal for us. The whispers got louder. Some of the alien women looked shocked. Others looked even more impressed than before. The king studied me carefully. You mean to say, he said slowly, that risking your life for another carries no expectation of reward? Exactly. The silence returned again. Then something unexpected happened. Princess Kilira laughed. It wasn't loud or dramatic. Just a soft, genuine laugh that echoed slightly through the chamber. The entire court looked at her in surprise. She stepped forward beside me, the glow along her skin bright and steady. My father, she said gently, this is what fascinates me about humans. The king raised an eyebrow. Oh, she gestured toward me. He saved my life without hesitation. When asked why, he simply said it was the right thing to do. That is what he claims, the king said thoughtfully. And he did not know our traditions, she continued. He did not know witnesses would interpret his actions as a declaration. She turned toward me, her glowing eyes meeting mine. Yet he acted anyway. The court fell quiet again. The king slowly nodded. That is admirable. A noblewoman in the audience stood up. If humans act heroically without seeking advantage, she said, then their species must be extraordinarily confident. Another noble nodded. To risk death without expectation of reward, that is a powerful trait. I blinked. That was not the reaction I expected. Princess Kilira stepped a little closer to me. In truth, she said softly, the human did not make a declaration. A few nobles looked disappointed. But, she added, her glow brightening again, I believe I will make one instead. The whispering returned instantly. The king looked curious. What do you declare, daughter? She turned toward him calmly. That I wish to learn more about this human. The hall erupted into excited murmuring. She lifted a hand slightly. Not through tradition, she clarified. Through his culture. Then she looked at me again. In your species, she said, what occurs when two individuals are curious about one another? I shrugged. Well, usually we spend time together first. And this process is called
dating.
The translator echoed the word across the hall. The court immediately began whispering again. One noblewoman leaned toward another. So the human must be studied through this dating ritual. Another nodded thoughtfully.
Yes.
It must be a cultural compatibility trial. I groaned quietly. That's not what it. Princess Kilira smiled slightly. I would like to begin this ritual. The king watched us for a moment before letting out a slow breath. Very well, he said. If the human's culture requires a preliminary bonding process, then the court will respect it. The nobles seemed satisfied with that explanation. A few even looked excited again. Apparently, alien aristocrats loved new traditions. The king looked back at me. Human, he said, you have introduced our world to a fascinating concept. Glad I could help, I said cautiously. And if this dating ritual proves successful, he continued, the royal bloodline may still welcome you. The whispering got even louder. I rubbed my helmet visor again. This entire situation was getting dangerously out of control. The ceremony finally ended a few minutes later, though the nobles kept watching me as I stepped away from the platform. Princess Kilira walked beside me. You handled that well, she said. I handled that barely, I replied. She smiled again, the glow across her skin flickering softly. I find your honesty refreshing. I find your planet terrifying. That made her laugh again. As we reached the exit of the hall, I glanced back over my shoulder. Dozens of noblewomen were still watching me. Some were whispering. Some were smiling. One of them actually waved. I quickly turned back around. Please tell me they're not all still interested. Princess Kilira looked back at the audience. Of course they are. Oh, good. She tilted her head slightly. Does that concern you? Let's just say I was expecting a medal and a thank you speech, I said. Instead, I had accidentally become the center of the most competitive romantic situation in an alien civilization. All because I stopped pirates from kidnapping someone. Princess Kilira gently nudged my arm. In fairness, she said, you did save a princess. Yeah, I replied. She smiled again. And now you must survive dating one. I sighed. Because judging by the way the entire royal court kept staring at me, this was only the beginning of the strangest diplomatic mission in human history.